So let's start with a quick round of introduction. Anthony, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Anthony Rose. I lead the technical team at Matter Labs. And Matter Labs is the team behind zkSync, a zk rollup for Ethereum.
Hi, my name is Declan Fox. I am the product lead at ConsenSys and also one of the co-creators of the Linear network. Linear is a new Type 2 zk EVM rollup on Ethereum.
Hi, I'm Dominik, and I'm from Polygon Maiden. And Polygon Maiden is a rollup for client-side proving.
Hello, I'm DJ from Kroma. I'm CTO and co-founder. We are building a rollup. We started as an optimism rollup and utilizing the zk EVM. So finally, we want to evolve to the zk rollup. So we are just focusing on optimizing the zk proving cost for now. Thank you.
Hey everyone, Bowen, lead protocol research and development at Near.
Cool. I'm Francesco, and I'm part of also ConsenSys. I'm leading developer community for around products, and yeah, super excited to be here. So let's quick jump. So just to understand a little bit the room, how many of you guys deployed on their dApps on a layer 2? How many of you guys are developers? Cool. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Let's start. Let's have both conversation for users and for developers. But which challenge you think do we have today for deploying on layer 2s? Anything that you want to mention? Challenges that you saw? Yeah.
Challenges that we've solved or that are still out there?
No, that there still are, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges now for all rollups is prices still, costs. So specifically, something that we're focused on is getting ready for 4844, which is proto dank sharding. This is going to be a new Ethereum upgrade. It's going to make rollups a lot cheaper to publish data on Ethereum mainnet. There are also some other optimizations that we need to take, not only for zk rollups around the prover itself, whether that's the software, the hardware, but also actually being able to amortize as many transactions as possible in a single proof. And then the data that we do send to L1, we want to compress that to be as small as possible, compact as possible, so that our gas footprint is very, very small. And ultimately, that's going to lead to lower prices for users, much more stable prices for users, and therefore much better consumer applications.
Nice. I would love to be next because I think one challenge is indeed still scalability, but I think proto-dank sharding won't really help with these 32 kilobytes per second. I think if we really want to scale, we need way more data availability or bandwidth or validiums or volitions to scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I think layer 2 implements much scalability than the layer 1, and currently the execution fee is much cheaper than the layer 1. So I think there are almost no challenging part for dev developers about the scalability, but still it's a little expensive. But after the Devconnect upgrade, all rollups may be much cheaper. So deploying costs toward almost all layer 2s are EVM compatible. So it's very good for developers. So I think all dev developers doesn't need to hesitate to deploy to the layer 2 for now. I think so.
Well, I think another challenge with layer 2s today is the composability between them. If you want to do a cross rollup transaction, or even just the liquidity is kind of fragmented across different rollups, and you probably need to have accounts on all of them in order to be able to use them, and actually trying to manage all your accounts between all those different rollups probably also quite difficult from a user perspective.
Sounds good. Yeah, please.
I think maybe just to jump in with even the first question, I think when you are thinking about where to deploy, right? So there's a huge amount of design space for L2s, and the design decisions between them are actually pretty substantial when you project them into the future, but maybe not obvious when you look at the systems today. There's a lot of nuance in security trade-offs, a lot of nuance in implementation details, and for an application developer, projecting the future and figuring out where you might want your application to be deployed is still, reasonably challenging question even today.
Yeah, I really like when you mention on kind of design patterns, and I think it's a lot of a trade-off that we need to think. But what are the trade-offs that today we see around scalability? Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the most obvious trade-offs is how compatible you are with the EVM. And so, Vitalik gave us this nice taxonomy around like types of zk EVM, which essentially means if you're a type 4 zk EVM, you're more language compatible. If you're sort of a type 2 or type 1 zk EVM, you're more compatible at the bytecode level. And then even then, if you actually look beneath the hood of some of these like bytecode compatible EVM zk rollups like Linear, there's different things you can do around whether you take that bytecode and you translate it into another set of opcodes and run your sort of EVM on a simulated virtual machine. So again, I think like Anthony was kind of saying, it's like gets quite complex when you actually look into the details there. But ultimately, like it ends up being what is the developer experience. Something that I say with Linear for developers building on Ethereum, Linear just like feels like home. Like it feels exactly the same as Ethereum. All the tools are the same, dApps can be moved over instantly, like it's just a very similar experience, and that's what we decided to optimize for. And I think other teams can optimize for building out new use cases which necessarily weren't kind of able to be done on the EVM with the previous constraints. I think that's like just one obvious trade-off.
Yeah, I would basically agree to that. I think the trade-offs are like usability and then performance and yeah, maybe even privacy. But yeah, like and usability would be more in the sense that you have access to the same tooling as Ethereum and have access like as when it feels like home or you can deploy without any problem, then this is a great advantage. But it might be that the EVM is not, with this sequential execution, not fast enough for your use case, or even not, it doesn't, like zk EVM might not even scale enough for 1 million users or whatever. And then, yeah, so that these are the trade-offs probably.
Makes sense.
I think the user experience is very important. I think most important. And there are some trade-offs between the security and the finality and the gas fee. So Optimus Rollup usually show the cheaper, but the finality is we need to wait at least 7 days. So that kind of trade-off exists. And about the security, usually the zk rollup finalizes instantly, and there are some proofs. So I think it's more secure. But the Optimus rollup usually, OP stack does not have challenge system. So we just need to trust them. But Arbitrum, they have whitelisted. And even there are 10 whitelisted verifiers, then some of them does not have any ETH in their accounts. That means there will not be any challenge. Yeah, because there are no ETH. So I think there are some trade-offs between security and some gas fees.
Just to kind of counter that a little bit, though, I do feel like we're going to a world where for zk rollups, with proof aggregation, with optimizations in the prover, that difference between optimistic and zk in terms of like the cost is just getting smaller and smaller. Like soon there won't be a trade-off around like prices or costs when choosing security. Like it's just same price, same cost, but better security.
I would argue we're borderline there today, and the zk rollups really only come to production this year, right? I mean, we're still in a pretty mature state, very, very early. I think all of them, to a first approximation, have some version of like an alpha label on them. And even today, when you look at the price of the fees on L2, like 95% of the fee roughly is DA. And the price of proving today is a relatively small fraction of the actual transaction cost. And these systems are getting better, like 10x, 100x improvements. Yeah, we're going to see this trend towards zero for the proving cost.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see, like with Near, you guys shipped, what was that last week? Like this, because I had always Aurora, but I think this is a new layer 2 on Near.
I mean VQASM, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's layer 2 started with basically everyone running like EVM, right? And then I think nowadays we see like non-EVM rollouts emerge, and for example, like there's Polygon Maiden and then like a bunch of other different kind of rollups that use non-EVM that kind of are able to provide benefits that maybe the zkEVMs or like the EVM-based rollups cannot provide, whether it's speed of execution or whether it's like privacy or whether it's something else. So yeah, I think offering like WASM as a execution environment where people can build like a rollup on top of, I think that's also a very interesting idea.
Yeah, I think also depends a lot, like we spoke about trade-off, but depends also on the use case that we're talking about. And speaking about use case, like any specific like use case that you see following some specific like, design patterns or a specific zk EVM versus optimistic versus non-EVM, like what do you think about, if you see strong, yeah.
Yeah, like I think we are trying to, or like with different projects, but we could build a private on-chain order book exchange. And what does it mean is that, for example, users keep their funds, like it's a non-custodial version, so you could, in theory, build FTX-like usability and also sub-second order updates that you can settle on-chain. But the users have the same privacy as they would have with FTX, for example, or even more, like maybe even privacy against everyone. They would keep their funds, and you can have this super fast execution, and using zk you could even prove that you are regulatory compliant in a certain jurisdiction. And this is something, like obviously it comes with trade-offs, like Maiden has its own problems with usability, like it will be very hard to develop first, but like this is like the trade-off, I guess. And yeah, but this is something you could not build on an EVM-like system, especially the matching algorithm when you would need to run over several orders on-chain and then always find the best. Like it's super expensive on an EVM. And you could tackle problems like what happened with FTX, for example.
Yeah, we definitely want to move away from any sort of FTX-like disaster again. I think that's absolutely some low-hanging fruit that the ecosystem should take. What you can still do on an EVM chain is you can start to use almost just like simple cryptographic libraries which do a bunch of like high computation off-chain, and then as long as they can like verify that proof on like the EVM in like a simple smart contract, and that EVM can be a layer 2, it could be linear, it could be a layer 2 zk EVM, then you can just start to scale almost like infinitely. Okay, so you can start to do all these crazy applications and use cases which can do extremely high throughput, compute storage like to the ceiling, and then just like simply settle it with a snark on linear, then gets aggregated in many other sort of snark proofs and eventually settled on Ethereum. So I think that just like paradigm shift, like we're still not really there in understanding what that could enable that's completely different from all the use cases we saw in Web 2. But I think now it's time for kind of like builders to use this infra to actually start like finding more utility and more applications that really, move Web 3 to the next sector of the adoption lifecycle.
Yeah, maybe just to agree and add, when we think about the scalability problem, I don't think anyone here thinks we're going to be making a huge amount of progress on that with a small number of, layer 2s existing, right? Like, effectively, to a first approximation, it's a rounding error on what Ethereum can do when we're talking about, a future internet of value powered by public blockchains. And for us, the real question is, like, how do we start to build, like, abstract that layer away from the users, but actually provide a lot of execution environments that can communicate with each other relatively seamlessly, people can deploy to them permissionlessly, and you actually have the ability to configure these things for different use cases, but you're able to preserve like interoperability, and yeah, the tooling can be standardized in a way that people can build these systems with single SDKs, and but still with the ability to configure them for whatever they need to do.
That's definitely interesting. Like, so specific use case, like you see, like more game company going to like specific like features, or like I know you guys are enable account abstraction by I think like there are specific also use case. You see DeFi also more focused. What about like on near like any specific like use case or industry that you see more?
Yeah, I think a lot of the consumer apps, I mean, if you look at the Dev Radar today, I mean, I think in top 5, 2 of the apps are on Near. The Cosmos, which is, they use Near to replace Stripe because it's much cheaper, so the loyalty program that they're building. And also Sweatcoin, which is just a work-to-earn app. So I think today we have like over 800,000 daily active accounts, and it's like quite a lot. So yeah, that's what we have been focusing on for past couple of years. Yeah.
Nice. And for this is like another subtopic, but for developers like out there, do we have enough? Like deploying on layer 2 is not a big like deal, but I see much more company building products or like developer tooling around layer 2s. Do you see still like tools that need to be developed, or what tools you guys develop around your layer 2? Well, I mean, whatever, yeah.
All right, jump in. For us, tooling was more of a challenge than for some of the bytecode equivalent ZK VMs initially, because tooling that was designed to support Ethereum in some cases required modification for us, given that we have a different virtual machine. Like we designed our virtual machine to be provable in ZK, and it just came with different trade-offs. We've spent a bunch of time, doing work to add support for all of the tools that are part of like standard developer toolchain, and made a huge amount of progress on that. But it's also exciting to actually start to see the tooling at layer 2 going beyond what's available at layer 1. Like we have built this super fast in-memory node. You can start to like profile transactions on the system in a way that, I don't know, like it's just cool to watch because it's tooling that I just haven't seen elsewhere. So I think, compared to Web 2, the toolchain experience, I think, for developers in Web 3 is still pretty immature, pretty janky, and there's still lots of room for improvement. As the space matures, I'm sure we'll see massive improvement in developer tooling. I think with L2s, we'll see a lot of people onboarding that haven't been building at layer 1, and they can bring some of these new ideas, new tools, and improvements that we expect.
Well, so nearest L1s, not L2, but so we're building this fast settlement layer with eigenlayer. So the idea is to facilitate fast cross rollup transactions so that they can settle on this joint layer between near and eigenlayer. So have kind of double security of both near and also eigenlayer stakers as like intermediate settlement layer before it finally settles on Ethereum, so that the rollups that actually use this layer can have very fast transactions between them, which is like not possible, especially if you want to do like cross ZK rollup transaction today. Like even the cost of posting the proofs on Ethereum, like for every single transaction, is going to get quite expensive. And I think most ZK rollups today actually batch a lot of the transactions together and then settle together to reduce the cost through amortization. So to do it on like a per transaction basis would be potentially too expensive today. So that's kind of what we're trying to, you can say there's a tooling, but there's also basically like settlement layer that all the rollups can use.
Yeah, Kroma is event compatible, so we don't need to develop new tools by ourselves. But we actually Kroma is I need to share some kind of context more. So we are backed by the WeMade, is Korean listed gaming company, and they have their own mainnet, WeMix 3.0. It's much cheaper, but usually user does not want to use that mainnet. They just want to use Ethereum. But it's still very expensive. And usually there are a bunch of game developers, but not that much of the smart contract developers. Usually they only code using the Solidity. So we need to stick to the Solidity or EVM usual tooling. And sometimes they want to provide some RPC endpoint, no crash, and very stable. So currently what we are focusing on is to provide that kind of stable development environment, not developing new tools.
What I would want to see as a user is a tool that tracks over all L2s and Ethereum mainnet, maybe my assets or transactions even. That would be cool. What we need to build for Maiden as tooling is actually tools that allow users to create their own zero-knowledge proof in a wallet. And I think like this might be where the industry is going. And then we need to different wallets, for example. We need wallets that can do that. And as a third point, I would say, like if we all rely on this zero-knowledge technology now to scale, then we need better education as well for our developers and also for the users, because it's like even the normal blockchain stuff is quite complex to explain to my mom, but like when zero-knowledge kicks in, then it's so much magic that people won't really understand anymore. Like the question is if they need to do, but if we want to have a transparent system that people trust in, then we somehow need to explain better what we are doing.
Yeah, it makes sense. Go for it, go for it.
I was going to say, beyond tools, there's one other area that, at least for us, was an area of focus in terms of like building a really good developer experience for people who we want to be building with the ZK stack, which was actually like, how do you get a local development environment that looks like a production environment? You know, you look at many of the production ZK VMs that are running today, and the GPUs that are powering this sort of proof generation is they're not the sort of machine you have at home, right? They're like 80 gig or hundreds of gigabytes in some cases of RAM required from the GPU. But for us, for the ZK stack, like one of the big focuses on our upgrade to the proof system over the last few months is like, how do we actually lower the hardware required for both the production cluster, so that we can start to work towards a world where the GPUs are decentralized and the proof system is decentralized. But also today, you can actually like end-to-end run, like deploy a version of the system on a local development machine and actually go all the way through to having the proof generated, which, you know, I think is a really important step, because in other cases, like a lot of the development environments, you sort of have to fake the proofs, and like going end-to-end is a huge part of actually making the system secure.
I think the only part I'd potentially add, and it's not necessarily developer tooling, but more sort of like a key infrastructure piece I see the ecosystem is missing. And this is this piece where if we do eventually have multiple diverse L2s and L3s and God knows what else, then how are we going to create an actual experience that unifies all of them without limiting the permissionless innovation? So how can we have different types of software, different types of roll-up framework, actually feel to a user like they're using one shared state whilst maintaining the fact that any team should be able to deliver a new type of innovative framework, and it doesn't sort of create any like walled garden or vendor lock-in. I think that's a really big piece that's missing now that we need to solve in the next year or so.
100%, yeah. I was yesterday in a small fireside chat with Stan. He was mentioning like a lot of like today companies are very like their GTM is very product focused, and they should go more like in an ecosystem centric GTMs. And I don't know, but I always wonder, like for layer 2s or rollups, like or scaling solution, like if there is a way to build something similar what we're building with Snaps for permissionless innovation, that you can enable also like community third-party developers to build tooling for layer 2s. Did you see something around the ecosystem? I know you Dominik, are all. I mean, you see a lot of things happening. Maybe you saw also like something similar where you can actually like activate much much better like the third-party developers in the community, helping you further develop develop products. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can you?
No. It's quite a random question. I'm just asking myself, if we're able, especially for layer 2 ecosystem, to drive the ecosystem thanks to the community, not just waiting for feedbacks, but also like similar what's happening with Snaps. That you are able to develop new functionality thanks to third-party developers. They are not part of your company itself.
I think like they are not here independent, but I think Starknet had a nice approach with like they had grants and problems and like had this repo Keep Starknet Strange, and then so developers of different skill level basically were able to really contribute to even core infrastructure, but also tooling, and it was quite a vivid ecosystem, and I think they did a good job, and like in activating the community and not building everything on their own. But obviously it's like heavily grant-based. But I think it's even cool if people build something, then they get rewarded for it. So I would say that was a cool program.
Nice. What are your usual, like, obviously everybody here is building the ecosystem through like, partners, ecosystem. Like, what are the usual like question that you always get around layer 2s? Like, is there some like, I don't know, you get similar, like for example, like I'm always hearing like question about, latency, integration problems. Is there like something like is happening that is similar that you can share?
When token?
That's for sure, yeah. When token, yeah.
Do you do a token?
do you do token? I think like, well, some of the questions we get is like when decentralization, actually. Like when is the community going to be able to sort of like own, really contribute to the protocol, and like Linear, it's it's on mainnet, it's a layer 2 zk VM, it's being bootstrapped by ConsenSys, but the idea is that ConsenSys needs to sort of like step away and it becomes a public good and a community-owned protocol. So we're here like helping sort of get this thing off the ground, to battle test the software that we built in our R&D, but ultimately the idea is that we need to make sure that this thing is going to be available 10, 50, 100 years into the future, and it needs to be bigger than any one team. And so we're really thinking about both the technical and political implications of how to decentralize, but also how to maintain the fact that this is a scaling solution, right? So like we want to be decentralized, but it needs to be a great user experience that has low latency on transactions and cheap transaction costs. And so we need to balance these trade-offs in a way that makes sense, whilst also leveraging the fact that we all kind of like, settle on Ethereum. We can leverage those like large validator sets for security.
Yeah, I think, at zkSync, we're taking a very similar approach with the vision of basically saying, like, this thing will only be successful and realize the vision that we have for it in a world where we are one contributor of many. So the system is fully open source, and we've definitely started to see over the last 6 months a really non-negligible contribution from outside of Matter Labs. It's really, satisfying to see stuff on Twitter for the first time rather than in an engineering discussion. But there are obvious challenges that come with it. So, these systems are complex, and you actually have to spend a lot of time to ramp people up, right? If someone's joining the engineering team, it's like maybe a few months before they're productive. But like external parties, like how do you actually do that in a safe way? So there are definitely challenges that come with that. So we've like looked for areas of isolation and really tried to partner there where we can really give something away. But then you also have to balance it with security, right? There's good reasons somebody might want to change one of these protocols, and they're not, some nefarious reasons too. So yeah, balancing security, but also like really do have to open up, really does have to be open source software, and has to become like a genuine like public owned protocol.
I just wanted to add to this because like we also thought about it, and I think it's the same. Like it is the problem that these systems are so complex that you need 4 months, as you said, to onboard, or it is a lot of work. On the other hand, like to really get these good first issues out that are somehow isolated, and you have time to review, and then so it would be so cool if we would have more of this. But it's also like a lot of work to get community involvement on the core product, and
or if you spent like $1 million on an audit for a smart contract, you might not want to accept that change, just without some thought.
Kroma is on the pace of the extending our ecosystem. And when we talk with the devs, sometimes they prepare some oracles, but always oracles want to pay us to them. Yeah, then the cost is not that small. So I think it's a big problem. And we want to connect the Remix ecosystem to the Ethereum, and then we need some kind of bridge. And there is so many options, but it's very hard to choose the best one. So when we want to extend our ecosystem, so that kind of stuff's really messy, and sometimes, that's very hard to choose. And also, we are the subsidiary of the VMade, but sometimes we may determine this is the best, but in our opinion, that's not the best. So this kind of stuff make hard for us to extend our ecosystem. Yeah. And also, we open source, and there are so many options, but every developer wants to grant, and that's not our expectation. It's usually higher, so it's very hard.
Well, so on the topic of decentralization, at least on the more L2 related side, I think we took a somewhat different approach. So the project, so the zkSync project is basically on day one a collaboration between our team and the Polygon Hermes team. So it's like two very big ecosystem behind it from day one, and then kind of all the code is open sourced, spread across multiple different repositories. We have like compiler, and that's we're building, and then there's the Polygon Hermes stack. We actually have like kind of almost opposite problem, like receive a lot of interest from different teams wanting to contribute, but the one challenge we have is that when the project is at the beginning, like at the very early stage, the architecture is still not very consolidated. It's actually hard to get like many people contribute at once. So I have to tell people, well, can you give us a few more months, and we kind of stabilize the architecture a bit more, and then like we can ask more people to start contributing, and basically be like a very community-driven project. Yeah, 100%. You have anything to add? If not, I will move to users. I think let's have also some spicy question. If you guys have any question, give me last one. I want to say only like how many of you guys think that the user experience is there for layer 2s, especially for users? Raise your hand if you think it's there. Yeah, one person. Okay, yeah, we definitely have a lot also to work at, as you mentioned, a little bit like on education side, but also like also on onboarding. Increasing much better like a smooth like UI, right? Cool. Anything to add? If not, let's open up for question. And let's make it spicy. I think we need to get one mic.
Yes, I think one question there. Yeah. I hope we are on time.
Okay, let's make it spicy. We're talking about the future of blockchain. At the same time, all of us are here building infrastructure, not products. And everybody would probably agree that we need more products.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the question to all of you, and every single one of you. What has to change in blockchain for you to say, screw infrastructure, I want to build a product now? Okay, thank you.
You need, yeah.
I think that there's a chicken and an egg problem, but for me, like the scalability problem is the problem to solve, right? Like until we have infrastructure where you can actually imagine a world where Twitter could be on chain or Uber could be on chain or any of these things at scale that can affect, you know, hundreds of millions or billions of people, like we have to build the infrastructure. So at least for me, this was like the first problem to solve, and we can actually, I think, see the end now. Like we can see where we're going with it. So I am excited to see smart people build applications now.
I think our whole industry is still way too much focused on developers and being a developer. And most developers I know, they want to solve complex problems. And we solve a lot of complex problems. And then we make our own problems and we solve them again. And then, but the real, the use cases that we wanted to solve 10 years ago or so, they're still not solved. And it might be because of scalability. It might be because of other reasons. But indeed, we have way more layer 2s than useful products in the whole ecosystem. But what I would want to solve, actually is payments. I think it would be cool to solve payments. Blockchains are meant for payments, and it's not super complex. The problem is that payments already work quite well. When I have my fucking iPhone, then I just scan my face and hold it somewhere, and it works. So there's not even a friction. I don't even pay in Europe. They just released a law that you can you can wire transfers for free all across Europe per law. So, and then I wonder what exactly, we could never match this user experience with a blockchain, especially in a decentralized, non-custodial way. So it is a good question. I still want to solve payments, but it might also be something that we cannot really solve near. Yeah.
Well, I think it is indeed a chicken egg problem, right? Imagine we have 1 billion users on blockchains today. Then I imagine there's huge number of entrepreneurs trying to build a product to serve those 1 billion users. But unfortunately, the fact is that we don't. And actually, a very interesting question is decentralized social media, right? Because if you think about how social media work, or the benefit that social media provides to users, it seems to me that at least blockchain actually can provide a lot of benefits to the users. Maybe not to the company building the social media per se, because it needs to figure out monetization and so on. But for users, for example, they can fully own their data, share their social graph somewhere else if they want to, and if they don't want to, then of course not. And then they can leverage the the composability of blockchain to use your social graph for a lot of other things. And also there are just random things well, I can just build a tipping feature within the app, and because it's linked directly to your account that you can send money with, right? You can just say oh, I like this thing, or how about I gave it some tip or things so a lot of the things that blockchain can enable, at least seems to me makes this decentralized social media a very compelling thing. But I think there's a lot of hurdle on the kind of the product side, and how to make it both appealing to users, can retain users, but also I think the question is well, how do you first build a user base? Because social network has this it's very centered around the network effect, right? Without a lot of people, then people won't want to come here, and then it becomes a very small place where either the degens or the blockchain maxis would hand out, which is totally fine, but it's that doesn't actually get us to a lot more users.
Yeah, we have some infrastructure that we can have some trust, but we didn't have enough user experience. Still, fees are very expensive, and every time I signed using my wallets, I think it's very bad user experience. So we need to improve user experience much better. But in the current infrastructure, I think it's not enough. Even if we adopt a contract abstraction, it still requires more fees, or even the other party need to pay instead of the users. So still there are that kind of a problem. So, but these kind of problems should be solved by progressing the infrastructure side. So we are still solving scalability problem, and we are still solving the privacy problem. So it will be improved. So we need to stick here and wait. Yeah.
Yeah, a question that you should ask also yourself is that, are we ready to onboard the next, million grandmas, right? If the answer is yes, let's build, a different use case. But I think on an infrastructure level, we are not ready. On the user experience level, I don't know. Are we ready? I don't know. Like, it's difficult, right, to onboard. Yeah. Any other questions before we're moving on? There on the back. Sorry to make you running. That's good.
Yeah, we are talking about the EVM and EVM compatible blockchain, but when we go to the outside, plenty of blockchains that exist. If we are talking about like connecting different kind of blockchain, like Bitcoin, Stellar, Ripple, and others, like is there a possibility of the connecting and speaking each other? Like, we are different nations here, and we are talking in English very nicely. Is there a language in blockchain area like in English? I mean, like in the near future. Thank you.
Well, I don't think the language is a problem, right? If you want interoperability between blockchain, like the language, like, let's say we can design different language that target, the same language that target different virtual machines. I don't think that's necessarily the problem. I mean, the problem is like with interoperability is that you need to have kind of the proof that on one chain you can verify like another chain, and which, I mean, maybe zk in like abstract term is the language to do that, and it can essentially, in the end, we should be able to get to a state where like on any blockchain you can essentially like verify the entire state transition of any other blockchain. So like then you can actually even like aggregate that and post that on one blockchain so that all the blockchains that post proof on that blockchain can interop with each other, and then like this applies to any like this kind of set of blockchains. So like once that is done, yes, then there will be like a lot of interoperability between blockchains.
Yeah, I think there are different. It's first to make different blockchains can communicate, and for example, CCIP and CCTP is read by the Chainlink and the Circle. So we can consider that is a kind of different language, even if they are defined by the different chains, different smart contract languages, but we can make it interoperable. But we need to understand how we can use and how much we can believe, because there are some kind of operators, nodes, and they have different architecture. So I think we need some kind of standard and how much we can trust that kind of standard and the operators. Yeah.
I think on a wallet level, I will definitely like answer you with snaps, because right now like all the non-EVM compatible snaps are available for users, so you can do BTC transaction, Solana transactions, so literally like building standards out different like non-EVM layers, but definitely. So Anthony, you had?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's not even like obviously a problem to solve for me. I think like crossing the trust boundary between these systems when they are very distinct systems is maybe just a fundamental problem, and like a place where we've seen a huge amount of risk and a huge amount of money lost because of implementation failures. I really don't think we're going to see a world where we see these many L1s, each with like very active ecosystems, and I think we will see a lot of convergence around whoever wins, aka Ethereum. And it'll be an ecosystem around, say, Ethereum, where we just see a lot of variety in what's built in that system because of the diversity of applications and rollups that you can deploy on top of it. But going outside of that trust boundary seems like it will carry some pretty systemic risk for a long time.
Cool. Oh, Declan, last words before we're closing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that I think rollups in particular work because they have a modular architecture. They rely on this sort of validating bridge to Ethereum, which then manages all of the sort of consensus and the ordering and the guarantees. as soon as you start to cross that boundary of trust and you introduce a different route of trust, where you can't necessarily have like an actual validating bridge, it doesn't really start to make sense. So yeah, I think I just agree. It's not really a problem that necessarily we need to solve next. Might not be a problem we ever need to solve.
Cool. I want to thank you everybody for sharing all your thoughts, and a big round of applause for our panelists.